Hi, everybody. I'm a raging papist, and I just saw this morning that Harriet Tubman is going to be added to the $20 bill to replace Andrew Jackson. Now, I'm not quite clear if Andrew Jackson is being entirely stricken from the bill. I've heard a rumor that he's simply going to be placed on the back in his on his cavalry position. I'm not certain, but let me just tell you what my initial thoughts and reactions are, and I'm going to try and not be as knee-jerk as I was when I found out this afternoon when I had a discussion with a colleague of mine. But essentially, I was in class this morning, and the gentleman to my left on his laptop was browsing Facebook, as I'm sure you can imagine, as everyone does in class, typical. Um, and of course, this guy, he's a good guy, but he's just another American. He's probably center left, which is where most of the country is. Most of the people on the right, we call them sort of the cucked right, as you all know, are center right, but very few people are actually in this country conservative, actually on the right. That's just the state of our society right now, and that's why progressivism will always win out in the end over anything that we have to offer on the right, because it's the trend. We are all on the left now. But anyway, so as he was on Facebook or something of that nature, and I saw a picture of a $20 bill with a black woman's face on it, and my initial reaction was, well, for starters, I said, "Wow, that is one remarkably ugly woman." That was my first gut reaction. I had no idea who she was. I didn't care. I just assumed that it was the typical propaganda that we've seen so many times from people on the left. We've heard, if you're sort of up to date on political affairs, if you're plugged into that kind of thing, you hear kicking around of people kicking around the idea of, well, let's put a woman on the dollar somewhere. There needs to be a woman, for God's sake, somewhere on some dollar. There needs to be a minority somewhere on a dollar. Doesn't matter which one. Obviously, these are leftists who want to have a woman or a minority figure on a currency of high circulation, so the 20, the 10, the 100, something like that. But they've never actually been able to do it. Normally, every time they lobby, they get laughed at and thrown out, as they should be. And we all just kind of move on with our lives. But apparently, the Secretary of the Treasury has just announced that they've finally done it, because in the coming years, they have to do a security update on the currency of the United States. And so every time they update security, they come up with a new design, something to either better fit the bill or something of that nature. And so they said, okay, well, this time, why don't we actually try something? Why don't we actually do it? And so they went to social media, which right there should tell you all you need to know about the kind of responses they're going to get. Social media being dominated by the left. And I don't, yeah, by the left, but I mean also the far left. We're talking SJWs, we're talking Marxists, cultural relativists, all the isms. They dominate social media. Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr is the cesspit of degeneracy. It's where it all kind of emanates from, but I'm getting way off track here. So they put this out for a vote, and they come up with sort of the best of both worlds now, because you can have on the $20 bill, which is one of the most circulated currencies, you have a woman who is black. So now you meet the minority quota, which everybody was screaming about, and you meet the female, which again, everybody was screaming about. There's also something in particular, though, in who they are removing, and if not removing, then relegating to the back of the bill, as I said earlier, Andrew Jackson. Now, who is Andrew Jackson? What's his deal? Because so many of us either don't know or don't care. We don't know our own history anymore. But he was the guy that ushered in Jacksonian America. And ironically, as as I was talking with my buddy earlier, President Jackson was the guy who sort of ushered in, he began ushering in the current sort of, especially for the left, for the Democratic Party. He was the head of the Democratic Party when he became president, and they smashed the Federalists. They obliterated the Federalist position. He expanded the notion of egalitarianism, of populism, of a vote for every man and for every man a vote. Politics does not need to be high-minded. Anyone can be political. And Jacksonian America was sort of this push for everyone to become political. The Federalists, on the other hand, were the sort of the precursors that they believed in sort of the natural hierarchy. They believed in yes, you should have the right to vote, but the vote must be constrained. Not everyone should be allowed to vote. Property holders should get the vote. Perhaps people with more property or more money should have a higher vote than others because they will be more responsible with their property. They have a greater interest in the well-being of society than the common pleb, was the Federalist position. And Jackson won by resounding success, partly because he was advocating for everyone to have a say, for God's sake. So naturally, people got caught up in the emotion, they got caught up in the idea of let's have power. And so they gravitated to that. Now, so he's clearly sort of the founding members of the Democratic Party, and we can see the roots in the way they think currently, going all the way back to him. There's also something else, though, that he is responsible for, and I remember this from my childhood. He is responsible for what's called the Trail of Tears. Now, most of us, I think, know what that is, but if you don't know what that is, that was essentially the rounding up and expulsion of Native American tribes from primarily the South. We're talking Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, those states, and pushed them west. Now, of all the things that I've just mentioned about Andrew Jackson, his populism, his platform, Jacksonian America, he partially bringing us even further westward, expanding the egalitarian right of the people, no one cares about that. No one remembers that. That means nothing to anybody. But that's how he is remembered. His singular moment in history is boiled down to the Trail of Tears. And I just think that isn't that sort of a delicious irony that the leftists have now decided to remove one of the principal founders of the Democratic Party to place a minority woman on it. You've just replaced yourself. Oh, ridiculous. That's where the country's going. As sad as that is, these are the people that willingly flog themselves, throw themselves, sacrifice, plunge the dagger into their own body on the altar of progressivism. That's what these people want. So in one undoing, we see that the left has now isolated themselves from the roots of their own party, the very beginning of the Democratic Party. And obviously the Democratic Party now has virtually no semblance to what it was back in the day when it was founded in the 1800s. But, you know, the thought of I'm going to appeal to emotion, to egalitarianism, to everyone, that is from back then also. So I just find it very funny that they have finally destroyed themselves. And they don't even realize it. Of course, they don't know this. They're too ignorant of this. So, but that's what they did by choosing Harriet Tubman. And at the same time, they are, for the nation now, not for the left, but for the nation, they see themselves as beginning to undo the damage that the Trail of Tears committed, essentially. Now, that's not the end of the story. And I've said this on other channels. I think I was speaking to Babylonian Hebrew about this. I get triggered a lot by the Trail of Tears and the treatment of the indigenous Native Americans. I get very defensive, and I'm going to try and not do that here. But essentially, why did the Trail of Tears happen? Because this is a question that the left never wants to ask. Why did this happen? Because the popular narrative is, well, these were just white guys who wanted the land. We all hate natives anyway, so basically we just chucked them into the forests to the west, and no one cares, and it was all bad, and we killed people, and imperialism, colonialism, throw all that nonsense in there, and that's what the Trail of Tears is. No understanding, no recollection, no interest really. They don't care. So, and I'll also be putting forward my views on Native Americans and the atrocities that we did commit to them. But essentially, here it goes something like this. Why did we view in Jacksonian America, why did we, the United States, white people, the West, at least, yeah, the United States, why did we view that the Cherokee in specific had to go? Because this was a popular notion. This was Jacksonian America. Everybody got swept up in this, and so it happened. What did the Cherokee do that we felt, well, now is the time that they had to go? Well, the Cherokee had always been against the white settler. Always. During the French and Indian War, they sided with the French. In the American Independence War, the American War of Independence, they sided with the British. In the War of 1812, in which the British came back for almost a second round and they successfully burned down the White House, people tend to forget that, the Cherokee were in support. So now all of a sudden, now that we've beaten back the British a second time after 1812, they are alone. They have no allies. No European power is interested in them. The United States has been firmly established, and as history told us, the British will never come back. It has been, the Western colonies have been lost to them now and forever. So where do the Cherokee stand? Well, they saw that the writing was on the wall. They knew that they were going to get pushed around and bullied by the United States, and so they began a course of Westernization. And I applaud them for this. Very good. They saw what the West had, and they said, I want that. I want that power and prestige. Good for you. Good for you. Go get it. And, they started adopting Western customs. They started having cabinets, offices, statehood. And what they did ultimately was, after 1812, they wrote a constitution. They wrote claiming sovereignty and taking these southern states for themselves. Again, very Western. They fashioned themselves after the United States. Now, when you do that, I want you to think about, what does that mean for colonial America? What does that mean for us? Because the Cherokee were minorities, obviously, in the South. They were part of the states. They had the protections, not of U.S. citizens, but of Native Americans, of Indians down there. And, although they couldn't vote, they couldn't, they were not really on reservations, but they were a homogenous population. They kept to themselves for the most part. The big Native American wars didn't actually begin until they went out west, and with the other tribes, and with our westward expansion, that's when the real large Native wars began. But when you adopt a constitution, when you become a state, when you proclaim your sovereignty, well, you're no longer a minority, are you? Now, instead of just being a population that we can live next to, you have now come out and made yourself an enemy, haven't you? Because now you directly said, we want nothing to do with you. We are our own independent things. You are not welcome here, and we don't want you. Fine. Very good. So now in the United States, we will not view you as a small community. We will view you as an enemy. You are now an enemy state. And so now that you have a constitution, now that you are forming a nation, we declare war on you. That's our territory. It's always been our territory since we got our freedom from the British. So we're taking it back. No, you're not allowed. You're not allowed to just proclaim your own sovereignty in the middle of our territory. Sorry, you can't do that. And that's how easy it was. There was no right-wing, all-white death squads that went in there to let's just start massacring Cherokee. their lives are meaningless. No, they made themselves an enemy. And so we conquered them. And to the right of the conqueror, that's how land, who claims land, who owns land, what governs land? The conqueror does. It's always been that way. We even acknowledged that as such when we got our independence from the British, because that was a big claim of, well, now that we have our own country, who claims the land? Is it the individual? Because it's not the British government anymore. It's now us. So that's when we made the ruling that stated that Native Americans cannot sell land to individual citizens. They have to sell their land through the federal government, and then individual American citizens can then purchase land from the government. That was the transaction. We had already established this by this time. And so we conquered them and expelled them westward. And yes, people died. Yes, it's bad. Yes, a nation was conquered. I understand that. I'm not even glorifying that, although I am thankful that we have a country. I do acknowledge that people did die, and it wasn't all pleasant. This is not a pleasant warfare is not a pleasant affair. I would never make that claim. But that's what happened. So we sent them west, and we got rid of that little constitution that they had scraped together. Now, that's why I'm really tired of I'm supposed to just, continuously flagellate myself for the rights of Native Americans. But how does that relate now to white nationalism? And although I have said this many a time to people, I am not a white nationalist, but when it's an excellent case study, isn't it? Why the Native American culture, why that died? How did they lose so badly? What caused them just to get crushed under the boot heel of Americans? Was it just that they were somehow? I don't believe it was just because they were somehow racially inferior or anything of that nature. I think it's purely cultural. Look at the Native Americans when the white man first arrived. Well, what happened was during the Native Wars of the mid to later 1800s. So after this whole affair with Jacksonian America, what then occurred was the natives that were out west were resentful, as they should be. They were a conquered people, and they maintained their homogeneous culture. They were native. They didn't want what the West brought. They didn't want what the white man brought. But this was also when the United States was very sure of itself. We were very sure of our heritage, our culture, where we come from. For God's sakes, we had just won our independence. That was not in doubt. We all knew that we were white. We all knew that we were all Christian and all that. So, and ironically, the native tribes that largely converted to Christianity, they adopted Christianity. Some of them died out because they were massacred by other tribes. Some of them still exist to this day on reservations. But the culture that maintained their homogeneity out west when we were doing our expansion, Manifest Destiny, they lost, didn't they? They couldn't hold it together. And that's not really because of force of arms or lack of force of arms. They had it. They had their tribes. They had their arms. They could have done whatever they wanted. But they still refused. They still refused to do that. And in the end, their culture was swept aside by a superior one. And that's how that went down. Did people die? Of course people died. White people died. Indians died. No one's going to dispute that. I'm not going to glorify either the whites or the Indians dying. I'm just saying, from a historical position, this is what happened here. And I'm not going to apologize for it. Do I wish that it happened? No, I don't. I'm never going to glorify someone's death. Because here's the thing. Even I would have said at the time, and this will lead back into the dollar, I promise you. I would have said at the time that if the Cherokee would have just, frankly, if they would have just become American, I'm not saying destroy your race or destroy your culture, but if they would have just, look, if you are westernizing, you were bringing commerce and industry and all those things to your tribes in the South, why didn't you apply for statehood? Why didn't you claim territory? Why didn't you look out for the well-being of your own people? Why does that have to come to me? Why were you trying to push that on me and my people, on the white? And I would be okay with that, because what would that mean for the United States today? Well, probably 30 to 40% of our population would be in some form Native American, and the rest would probably all be white. And you'd be doing everything the exact same way that we were. You would be Christian. You would have European culture and the mindset, because you got rid of your inferior culture. And I know that sounds terrible, right? You got rid of your inferior culture. But clinging to that culture in the first place, that's what cost you. That's what cost the Native American in the West. They would not adapt. They would not assimilate. They would not change in the face of an obviously superior force. And they consigned themselves to the dustbin of history. And this is the thing that's, you know, it's all morally gray, because we are talking about the lives of human beings, the lives of people. But this is what happened. That's why we still have reservations. There's still people out there, and for any Europeans that may watch this, no, everything's pretty good out there. For God's sake, they have their own tribal councils. They do their own thing. But are they American? Not really. They never assimilated. They never wanted what we had, and so they live in their corners. That's it. They never became part of the greater thing. Now, how does that relate back to? Obviously, you can trace then Andrew Jackson and how that happened with the culture. But what does Harriet Tubman represent? Because again, the same way that people only think of Andrew Jackson and they think only of the Trail of Tears and the atrocities that whites commit, as they always want to do. What does Harriet Tubman represent? No one knows anything about Harriet Tubman. No one cares about Harriet Tubman. The only thing that people care about is that she freed black slaves in the South. That's it. No other accomplishments. She could have been a terrible person. She could have been anything. Who knows? Maybe she was a saint. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe she was. But people only care about that slavery thing. That's it. And it's funny because in the videos that I do and in my chats with my fellow reactionaries, I always have to say, I'm not a white nationalist, but I swear to God, this is the kind of stuff that makes white nationalism, the ethno-state. I think the ethno-state is such a ridiculous idea. I don't favor the ethno-state. I'm not going to favor something that means that we need to expel people or have violence amongst our own people. I'm too much of a nationalist for that to happen. But my God, how can you expect the white nationalist to sit there and be lectured by a progressive constantly? Constantly. It always happens. And this Harriet Tubman on the 20 is just one more example of that. They will not let you forget. They might say that we are post-racial. They do. Not might. They do. They say you're post-racial. They say that we're better than this. They show that we are better than diversity, and all of these things. And then they say, but still, it's not enough. We need to erase you. You are the problem. So get rid of Jackson. Get rid of Jacksonian America. Let's get Harriet Tubman on there. And this is great because she's an altruist black woman who's a minority and a female. So, the reason the white nationalist is feeling pressure, the reason why belief in an American ethno-state, why that's on the rise, because I see this so many times on Twitter from members of the Gamergate community, from other people on the right. It's like, what is this ethno-state stuff? Why is that happening? It's happening because we are always pushed. The difference between the quote-unquote the cuck and the guy on the right is that, in my mind, is the cuck a bad guy? No, he's probably not. But the reason I call him a cuck is because he doesn't understand the game. He's not seeing the forest from the trees. He doesn't really understand what he's up against because he's not willing to say that progressivism is the enemy that does not stop. They're willing to take the compromise, you see. And from what I have learned personally, and I think what the reactosphere knows, is that you can't negotiate with progressivism. They were never after negotiation. Because look at this. How about this? How about for a compromise on the $20 bill? If you want to show that you're truly diverse, that race doesn't mean anything to you. How about a compromise? How about we have and it can be all against slavery. It can be all against all, let's flagellate ourselves more. Okay. But how about we have Abraham Lincoln on one side, Harriet Tubman on the other, right? You'd think that would appease the left. You would think that that would appease these people that are like, no, 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 we have to get rid of slavery and our legacy, and we have to flagellate ourselves. That's a good compromise, right? But then if you were to suggest that, that's not good enough for them, is it? Because there's still a white man on the dollar. So right there, that betrays their motivation. That betrays what they want. And you can't compromise. You cannot compromise with them on that. I would extend that to every single issue. Now, this is not about, for God's sake, this video is going all over the place. I really wanted this to be about the 20, but I have to use this as an example because it's so obvious. It's just so obvious. Look at the gay marriage decision in the United States. What did the left want? What did they demand from the people? They demanded acceptance and normalization, right? And at first, everybody was aghast. No, 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 that's ridiculous. That's not just a bridge too far. That's off the fucking plantation. That's off the reservation here. That's crazy. And they hammered us again and again and again to the point that we said, in good faith, we are the ones in good faith. We said, okay, we will compromise. We are not going to accept homosexuality. We are not going to normalize homosexuality. We will give you civil unions. And when you have your civil unions, you have all the legal representation of a traditional, dare I say, normal straight couple, right? There will be no more legal injustices. You get what you want, right? Because you're saying at the same time that you care about the legal injustices to the poor GLBT community, right? And what did they do? They accepted. They accepted the compromise. They accepted. They say, we'll take that. And then a month goes by, 2 months go by, and then they come back saying, we want acceptance and we want normalization. And when it was looking like in the country that they weren't going to get it, what did they do? Shut it down. Take away the debate, take away the discourse, and end it, because you are a threat now. Because we cannot compel you. We clearly cannot compel you because you're not joining our side with the whole acceptance and normalization. So we'll take away your right to vote. So we will simply go to the Supreme Court, and in the law of the land, now if you disagree with that, you're a bigot. By law, it was enshrined. And that's the end of the debate. That is how the progressive works. So to me, that's what differentiates the cuck from the conservative. The cuck doesn't realize that as long as he continues to negotiate with the left, he's going to lose every single time. So now, what does that mean with the rise of the ethno-state? I shouldn't say with the rise of the ethno-state. We don't have an ethno-state. But with the rise of white nationalism, these are simply people, in my mind, that have come to realize you can't negotiate. You can't negotiate with the left. They say they want diversity. They say they want all these things for people to get along, right? So that we have better communities and better opportunity and all these things. And then you realize that when you say, okay, how about a compromise then on the dollar? You want your diversity. You want us to acknowledge the contributions to this great nation of minorities and women. Okay, how about on one side and then the white guys on the other? Half and half. We both get something, right? And then you realize it's not good enough for them. They want to abolish you. They want to abolish you. And that is what's giving rise. That is what is fueling the fire, the engine of white nationalism in this country. Again, I'm not a white nationalist. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying you need to understand why this is occurring. Because I always love it. I love it when I'm talking politics with a leftist and I start addressing of course, they never know where I stand, right? Because I'm not allowed to let anyone know that I'm in the reactosphere or on the far right or anything like that, or on the alt right. I give them the most generic, milquetoast, conservative answer, and that is already a gas to them. That is already far too much than they can stomach. And it's like, and I get hit with the argument of, I just don't understand the right. How do they feel that way? Well, I'm telling you, I just told you how they feel that way. That's why. It is because you don't stop. You never stop. And how does this relate to feminism? Well, I was just reading an article on USA Today. I know it's a shit rag, but the point is this: how is this being looked at by everybody else? And they have a quote here. And this is the beauty. The beauty of this article is that USA Today, the author, these people don't understand. They don't understand the horrifying nature of what this person is suggesting. But they ended, for God's sake, they ended the article with this quote. So I'll just read it. So they're interviewing this woman historian on what she thinks of the new dollar, of the new $20 bill with Harriet Tubman on it. She said, historian Doris Kearns Goodwin, who had personally lobbied Lou to put Eleanor Roosevelt on money instead, said she was heartened that the process generated such passion about American history on all sides. See, they always say that. They always say that, oh no, we just want to instill history. We need to have a discussion. Let's have a conversation about race. Let's have a conversation. So at the same time, they get all excited that people are getting angry and expressing outrage, and you have arguments on all sides. And then she goes on, she hopes more and more women will be added to the currency, quote, such that a century from now, Americans will begin to ask, where are the men? Where are the men? That's what she wants people to be asking when they look at currency in the future. So I don't know what more you could ask for. I mean, the evidence is all right there. This is a feministic, anti-male, anti-white, anti-American, frankly, response to this. If you are an American who sort of considers yourself a conservative, you're very slow to the idea that egalitarianism, equality is a myth, or it's not good, or we shouldn't be striving for it. Well, you really have to look at the words of that woman and of what's coming out of the left now, and just, you have to be able to see that these people are against you, right? That they don't want to work with you. This woman just flat out says she doesn't want men on the dollar anymore. She's a feminist. She wants women to supplant men, and that's what feminism is today. That's why feminism is breaking down. Thankfully, at least in the United States, fewer and fewer women are saying that they are feminist. Thankfully, thank God, because it has been, the spotlight has finally sort of started to come on it and say, look at how ridiculous this is. Look at how anti-male this is. Look at how anti-American this is. Right? So even if you find yourself, you're like, oh, I'm a staunch libertarian, I'm a staunch, centrist, or whatever have you. You don't consider yourself alt-right, but you're not on the left. These are the things that push people to the alt-right, because we just kind of see it for what it is, that this is a war, and this war is not going to end until there is a victor. And we are people that want to preserve our society and our culture and our way of life. It's perfectly logical. It's perfectly humane. And my position is, I am not advocating for violence. I'm not advocating that we start expelling people. But that's the thing. I am also very sure of who I am as a person. I'm very sure of my Christianity. I'm the raging papist. I'm very sure of my white identity. I intend on marrying and having children with, God willing, a white woman. I want to have a good, non-degenerate family. I want to contribute to my nation and to my people. My people are my nation. I want to give to God and country. That's That's where I stand on this. And I suppose one of the ways I kind of differ from white nationalists is that they really, some of them, I can't say this. I am becoming more amenable to the arguments of we need an ethno-state, of we need white nationalism, because I just don't see how you can look at this and not come to the conclusion that white heritage, white culture, and identity is under assault. And not just here, but constantly. I'm just not ready to pull the trigger and say that we are going to expel or do violence or do any of these things. And so the way I think that we should conduct ourselves is be sure and confident of our race, of our religion, and our people. Marry your own race. Go do things the way your people do. I'm a nationalist. And so that's how this Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill, so many people think, raging papist, you're going to blow this out of proportion. Don't let this trigger you. It's a dollar bill. Who cares? Who cares? But it's one more skirmish. It's one more dent in our fabric. It's one more tear, I should say, in our fabric. One more dent in our armor of this culture war that will never end. It just doesn't end. It can't end. And it can't end because the left will not allow it. So I don't even know what to say anymore. I've rambled for so long about all a myriad of topics. But is this not depressing? Maybe it's not depressing to you. I think it probably will be, though. It probably will be for my audience. But, maybe this will be one more event that kind of pushes people to the ridiculous nature of what's going on. It will be a red pilling event for some people. And that's good, right? That allows, when people start, having these red pill events, then they will start to come to our side because they will start to realize that cuckservatism offers nothing. It doesn't offer safety. It offers a slow, steady decline. So, I don't know what else to say about this matter. Harriet Tubman's being added to the 20, and you should care for reasons. Okay, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Feel free to comment and share your thoughts about it. Maybe it's not a big deal. Maybe you have a different take. So I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for coming out. Bye-bye.